afternoon, good morning. Welcome to our strategy decoded, talking strategy and taking strategy into real life. What do we mean by that? How are we going to do that? This is the first of many series that we're going to be taking strategy into real life. We're talking about how do you operationalize strategy. It's a big word. It's a tongue twister at times. My name is Mphathela Mokhatle, and some people know me as Pat, and I'll be a facilitator this afternoon or this morning. The series looks at specifically unpacking how do we help entrepreneurs, business owners take paper into real life and implement. We're going to talk tips. We're going to engage with you. We're going to actually set the scene in terms of what's going to happen going forward. And I'm not alone today. I've got a fantastic panel with me today. And first and foremost, we've got a poll that we've put up. Please have a look at your poll and let's see what kind of business you are into. What are you running? Where are you? But let's get straight into the crux of it. As I said, I'm not alone. It's not about me today. It's all about the fantastic team that I've got here. And first up, we've got Adrian. Adrian is an economist, economics, finance, strategy professor at Gibbs Gordon Institute of Business. He's also founding director of the Gibbs Center of African Management and Markets, serves as global investment specialist at Genera Capital. He doesn't like being called Prof, but I'm going to do it for the fans here. Prof, how are you doing this morning?
I'm very good, thank you, Pat. It's been a fantastic start to the Thursday. I'm joining from Johannesburg, so beautiful, magnificent weather, blue skies. Happy Thursday, everyone.
Awesome, Prof. With that beautiful Thursday, take us through what is strategy before we even operationalize it. What is strategy? Why is it crucial for business? If I'm a one-man show, do I need strategy? If I'm a multinational, let's run through what is strategy. Please unpack it for us this morning.
Pat, I've just had the great privilege of spending a couple of hours with MultiChoice. And I guess that's a business that will need almost no introduction to anyone who's on our webinar, discussing exactly this, the essence of strategy. And I shared with them one of my favorite stories about strategy, because regardless of the size of your business, here's the big reveal. You've got a strategy, whether you know it or not. Now very often, we say, well, what's our strategy? Our strategy is to become a market leader, to pursue new opportunity, to become, known for our brilliant quality, speed to market. We've got all of those words. Those words are not strategy. Strategy is what you do, not what you say. And I overtrade in this story, but I think it really it really captures the essence of strategy. My son has recently turned 18 years old, but at 6 years old, I remember driving him to school for his first sports day, and I asked him how he was going to do. If my memory is correct, he was going to run in 100 meters. It's 12 years ago, so it might have been 50 meters. But, I asked him as a 6-year-old, I said to him, how is he going to do? And he said he's going to win. Now, that's what every parent wants to hear. My son's going to win. What a lovely ambition. But that's not a strategy, because I imagine every other parent driving their child to school was asking the same thing, how are you going to do? And very few kids are saying, I'm going to come last. Or maybe a few in a sober moment might say, I'm going to come second or third, or I'm going to do well. But when everyone sits down at the line, they're going to win. And so, that intention or that ambition is not your strategy. The strategy is when you are in the race and how you execute. So the fact that he arrived at the race, that's strategic. He arrived there. The fact that, when the starter's gun was fired and he set off, from the start line, that is strategic. Doesn't matter what size your business is, you have a strategy, whether you know it or not. And then we can get into, the essence of today's discussion, which is the execution or the implementation of that strategy. And I'll make 2 points very quickly. The first point is about the fact that, well, Kaplan and Norton have a famous piece of work where they talk about strategy being the place where the rubber meets the sky, not where the rubber meets the road.
Wow.
That when you look at how businesses actually perform in terms of their intent or their plan, they very often land up in other places, which means it's luck, it's providence that's determining where you land up, rather than your ability to execute and implement. And so here, let's stay with the running analogy, but I'll go to someone else. I'll go to Usain Bolt, who needs no introduction. And if Usain Bolt sits down at the start line of 100 meters, I'll make 2 bets about him historically. The first is he's likely to finish in first place. And the second is he's likely to finish in about 9.8 seconds. He is brilliant in execution. So everyone who sits down at the 100-meter line in the Olympics says, oh, I'm going to win. There's a few are saying, I hope I'm going to win. Usain Bolt says, I know I'm going to win. And the ability to get from the intention to the outcome, that's when you're in the business. You've got out of the business of luck and you're into the business of skill. And one of the core capabilities of businesses, one of the core competitive advantages of businesses is the capability to implement that strategy.
Now, Prof, just to hold that thought here, which is actually brilliant. There's a massive gap here between paper, which is looking glossy and amazing, and we all go away to the mountains for 3 days, and we come up with this great strategy, and we bring in Prof to come talk to us. We get motivated, we amped, but we go back to the office. Now there's a massive gap. Prof told us, listen, your business is not going to do well. You need to change course. How do we move from that paper, the distance between paper and actual execution? How do we do it? What needs to happen? Because there's a significant distance. What do we actually physically have to do? Because you spoke about execution. Your son said, I'm going to be number one. But how was he going to execute? The how part. Take us through that.
Yeah. Okay. There's first a point that we need to underline. We can come back to this, but the fact that he says, let's give him a name. His name's Saxon, so that he doesn't stay abstract. Yeah. So let's say Sax says he's going to win.
Yeah.
Every other kid that's on the start line also says they're going to win.
Correct.
The only way that he's going to win is that he has done something unique, something additional, something extra. And that uniqueness could be that he was born with particularly long legs, or I'm not sure what you would call the starter muscles in a sprinter, but he was born with that. Now, let's keep in mind that is fortunate that he was born that way.
Yeah.
But now that's his core capability, and if he looks after that, that's a skill. He might have done meditation, visualization, slept early, trained hard, eaten well, got the right coach, watched the races 1,000 times over. All of that is preparing for the implementation. Let's stay with Usain Bolt for a second. Usain Bolt says he's going to win. And I love this stat. It's such a cool throwaway stat. Bolt competes in 3 Olympics. And in those 3 Olympics, he earns 8 gold medals. His total track time for those 8 gold medals is 120 seconds. His preparation for those 120 seconds is 20 years. Okay, so that is, and that's what sits behind your implementation, is it's not a good fortune or something that happens by coincidence. It is deliberate. You've got intent. And here, 2 other things spring to mind. The first is that you can hold yourself accountable, that when you say that this is our plan, this is what we intend to do. When you come back 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later for the strategic review, bring that previous plan with you. It'll remind you of what you said you would do. Okay, I'll stay with the running theme. I don't know why we've got hooked on the running theme, but I'll stay with the running theme.
I like it. Let's go down that route. I really like this Usain Bolt concept.
I've license for that. Okay. So Pat, overshare, but in January, I've been entered by a friend into a marathon. What's my plan?
I hope it's not 90 kilometers of the Comrades Marathon.
It ain't 90 kilometers. I think his plan is to get me to the Comrades. We watched the Comrades together this year. I think his plan is to get me to the Comrades. I think he's got a veiled strategy, but it doesn't matter how much I say to myself, I must start preparing, I must start planning, I've got to get that road time. I tell you what I'm telling myself is I'm going to finish that race. But that's not a strategy.
Yeah.
That's a dream, a wish, a vision, an intention. It's not a strategy. I'll tell you how my strategy is going right now is I was traveling overseas for 2 weeks. It was very, very busy, but I found some time to run on the road a little bit. And now I'm starting to implement. Since then, the strategy hasn't gone so well because I've come back to 2 incredibly busy weeks in Johannesburg. Strategy's been derailed.
Yep.
I've got to get back on the road, and it's got to happen this evening. Now, that's the accountability. And then, the second thing is you can see how, in this way, I'm actually executing my strategy, that I have a strategy or a plan. Let's call it a plan. The plan is to run the race, the marathon in January. So far, the execution is a little bit on-off. I think I'll finish, but my implementation right now leaves a little bit to be desired. And so no matter how much I intend to do or what I say I'm going to do, I am in the business right now of executing my strategy, and I'm not scoring 10 out of 10.
And that's fine. And I think most of the time we're thinking when we're implementing a strategy, it must be 100% all the time. There's peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
Okay, Prof, I'm going to come back to you. Let me hop on to Christelle at the moment. So for the audience, Christelle is a seasoned strategic and financial advisor with over 25 years experience, specializing in infrastructure, property, and tourism sector. She is a director at BDO and leads the SDA division, delivering innovative solutions and driving sustainable growth. Good morning, Christelle. I just want us to keep on. We're still going to run this race, but I want to understand, why is strategy so intimidating? I mean, Prof has got a strategy. He's going to be running in January, but he knows how to implement strategy. I thought I'm going to run, but I've not even left my chair. Why is it so intimidating? What's the myths that come with, strategy when you're a small business? Take us through that, please.
I think, Pat, the biggest thing would be, in my view, is the fact that we don't necessarily always see it as part of the everyday business. It's something we do in addition to the everyday business. So to try and make sure that you start to bring it into the everyday plans, part of your operations, so that you then see how you are executing it. I think that is what makes it important, because you do have what you call your actual work, and then you think you have strategy. And you tell yourself, I need to get out in the trees and actually sort of view what's going on and so on. And I think also it is everybody's strategy. So Prof speaks about himself. That is his need to run. But it could also be there's a team that needs to run. So now you need to get the whole team into understanding the same strategy. Prof needs to think about how he can do it. But if you're now running this with a team, you need to find time to actually get together, do it together, make sure that you're all in the same place at the same time with a plan, make sure that you're monitoring each other. And Prof, please tell us, you're going to get on there tonight. Tell us where we're going to come and check. I'm not a runner, but I'll come and keep you honest. But so, so Prof says that's fine. Okay. But I think that is it. So if we keep to we always think that strategy is the sexy thing. It's this thing that we do, like you say, when we go to the mountains. Normally somebody else either helps us or does it for us. So now we've got a document, or we've got a few things that we need to be held to, but then we get back to the everyday life and we don't know how to put it into the everyday life. So my view would be, We need to get out of the sexy and get into the real, get into how do I put this into the everyday things that I've got to do, that my team's got to do, that the greater firm's got to do, and then how are we going to be checked against that continuously so that you can actually reach whatever the strategy may be. You know, not all strategies are made to win, but maybe somebody else can get into that. You know, a strategy could also be to close down part of the business, part of a product, part of a certain thing, etc. So there's a lot of strategic thinking that goes into different parts of a business. And even if you're a small business, you know, when you may have started off, you may have been like Prof, you're running on your own. It was good to have the strategy and the plan in your head. Then you get a few more people. Now suddenly you have to get the strategy into other people's heads. And then you grow a bit more, and then you need to take the strategy and take it to investors, and you need to get it into their heads so that you need to formalize it more, so it becomes more of a formalized plan. And then sometimes it feels like it's not yours anymore because it's sort of gone out of your head and it now belongs to other people. And I think that is the important thing, Pat. It's just to keep it real. Keep it part of, okay, so what does this mean for strategy this week? And you need to coming back to it. You know, a year, you know, this may be a 5-year strategy, but you're going to come look at it 5 years. You're going to come look at it at the end of the week, like Prof has done now. Okay, well, it's now 2 weeks. This is now whatever time. If we don't start with this part now, we're not going to actually get to any of the plans that we need to do. But also, if it goes awry, then replan. I mean, the strategy does not mean you can't change it.
So you're talking about the consistency of it, which is quite important. I mean, a lot of times we're thinking you've got the strategy, then it's going to happen overnight. But it's the small actions over time that actually mean a lot.
Absolutely.
I'd also like to put up a poll, Christelle, for everyone here on the call. You know, and the question is, do you struggle with operationalizing your business? Please just hop onto the poll and let's see where you are in that space. And then, Christelle, for a business owner that finds strategy development unclear, very difficult, complex, where do we start? Please simplify the process, because, you know, Prof told us what strategy is, but now I'm a business owner. I just hear, I don't know, where do I go? How do I put together this thing? What is it? How does it look?
So often there's an impetus. There's a specific thing that makes organizations go out to do strategy. It may be that you've done a merger, which sort of indicates to people, listen, we actually need a strategy, some things that need to happen that don't normally happen. It may mean that you bought on a new product. And now you need to figure out how do you bring this product into the new product, into the older products. It may be that you're exiting products. And it may mean that you need to change, I don't know, your landlord doesn't allow you to be where you are. Now you've got to change your whole structure of how you're going to do business. And so all of that may end up pushing you towards some or other strategic thinking. Now, not all of it has to be a whole hog strategy for the operation from start to finish. Some of it could be a product strategy. It could be very specific to a geographic strategy, and your rest of your business has its own strategy. So I think that people mustn't necessarily all think that it's always a big thing, and you always start with what's my vision, what's my mission, and what's my purpose. It's not all that is not necessarily all strategy. And we all struggle. Listen, I struggle, okay, because we get working. You have to deliver for clients. Then suddenly I get a thing from my business development unit saying, hello, we want your 5-year strategies in by the end of the week. And I got to go back and think a bit, and I got to think of, have I gotten to this? Is it really still? And I got to think of, the biggest thing is what has changed out there in the world. What is going on? I need to keep on top of this world, and this world is not necessarily an easy world to keep on top of at all. So, you know, it depends on where my products come from. It depends on, now suddenly there's a lot of sustainability requirements. And if I have either clients or links with Europe, etc., there's things that I need to start thinking about, because otherwise it may put me out of business before I need it to be put out of business. So it really is just whether you're small, big, etc., keep on understanding your environment. And that is often what we go do when we go help in strategy. It's not, we don't know your business as well as you know your business. I promise you, I'm not going to tell you something that you didn't know or at least think is going on in your own business. But what we can do is help you think about what is going on outside, help do that research, because you don't have time to sit and do that as well, because you're running your business. How do you bring that into the business decisions then? And how do you bring the people along within your business? Who needs to be as part of those decisions, and how do you need to bring them along, and then basically execute that strategy? But yes, to me, it's those little steps, and it's just constant thinking and not feeling bad if you're struggling with it, because honestly, most of us struggle.
Oh, thank you for that, Christelle. I think it crystallizes that it's not a, one shoe fits all, where I pull my strategy and it's going to work and it's guaranteed and it works 100%. There will be kinks, there will be changes, there will be some differences. Christelle, just hold that thought. I want to hop onto Sifiso. Sifiso is also a seasoned strategist. Sifiso actually did his MBA at Gibbs. So we've got a Gibbs alumni on the call. He is also, bringing extensive experience from both management consulting and entrepreneurship, successfully led in the launch and management of two prominent franchise brands, giving him first-hand experience of operational excellence. So with a proven track record in business strategy, Sifiso has played a great role in guiding businesses through growth. So let's bring someone who's actually run a few businesses and hear how Sifiso has done it, what he has done, and we'll put up another poll. We just want to know that, does your business have a strategic plan? It's a simple yes or no. Sifiso, good morning. I want to jump straight right into it. How can businesses create a culture? And a lot of times people use the cliche, culture eats strategy for lunch. That enables, but not only enables, distinguishes between strategic thinking and operational efficiency and performance. I love it because, this for me, it says a lot. Let us into that. What are we dealing with here?
Love it. Thanks so much for that question, Pat. And I think the first thing for me that we really got to do is we need to, just echoing Prof's thoughts or sentiments earlier in the call, we need to sort of distinguish properly between this idea of operational effectiveness or excellence, if you will, and then strategy, right? And so you can think of, for all our audience on the call, operational effectiveness or excellence as the myriad or the plethora of activities that we engage in as business leaders to either produce, sell, or deliver a certain product or service in the market. That's operations. And if you do that well, Pat, then we can call it operational effectiveness or excellence, right? But then parallel to that is this idea of strategy. Now, strategy, and I love it how A.G. Leafley, the former CEO of Procter & Gamble, he says strategy is us determining where we want to play and how we want to play to win. And of course, in that process, we need to look intrinsically and say, okay, what are our core competencies? Prof said, what makes us unique? What makes us special? What are our core competencies, capabilities? And then based on that, right, we then make some strategic decisions. We say, okay, because of this, or on the strength of this, where do we want to play? And then we say, how are we going to play to ensure that we can win in whichever environment we've then decided to play in, right? So those are the first things, Pat. For me, it's important, we must distinguish these two ideas. And I'm not arguing, Pat, that operational effectiveness or excellence is not important. What I am saying is that I think we only begin to really achieve sustainable success when we merge these two ideas, or when we merge these two worlds, right? How do we create that culture, Pat? Back to your question. Number one, I think the stat is 95% of employees in a business don't know the strategy. Now, Pat, I don't know, you tell me, how can we implement our strategy or execute on our strategy if we don't even know our strategy, right? And so, number one, I think, in my view, business leaders really need to be intentional in communicating the strategy to the organization, right? Yeah. We need to ensure that the people in our business actually know the strategy. And then number two, adjacent to that, we need to ensure that they understand their role in the strategy. right? We need to ensure that they understand how they actually fit in this strategy, right? Their role in achieving the strategy. And I think when we begin to understand not only what the strategy is, but as an individual in this business, what my role is in achieving the strategy, then I think we begin to get closer to creating that culture of strategic leadership or strategic thinkers in the business.
And Teresa, that's important, because if I'm an employee and the business is saying we're going to a 50 billion entity, I think, okay, well, does that mean I get more bonuses at the end of the day? That's what I'm thinking. I'm just an employee, so yeah. Where do I play? What KPIs are critical to ensure that as Pat, the employee, yeah, I make sure we achieve that goal with just a little piece or a little corner that I have? Because if the KPIs are not aligned to the strategy, and I just have to keep on typing the whole day, let's say that's what I do, I type, I'm a copywriter, but my copy doesn't support the strategy. What are we doing? So what kind of practical KPIs do I need as a copywriter to get to the 50 billion mark?
Pat, you said one word, and I'll highlight it, illuminate it. You said aligned, right? And for me, I want to start there, Pat. I think this question for me is less about what are the practical or tangible KPIs that need to have in place. But for me, the question is, are those KPIs that we do have in place that are measuring our performance, are they actually in the first place even linked to our strategy, right? And so a lot of times in business, we have these abstract KPIs in place that, number one, sometimes are not really relevant. They don't really impact our bottom line or our performance. But then number two, Pat, we also have conflicting KPIs many a times. And especially, for a small business, that might not be the case. But the bigger we get, for large corporations, for large businesses, we often not only have conflicting KPIs. And sometimes, one business unit might have certain goals or certain KPIs. And sometimes that actually conflicts with another business unit that might have slightly different. So KPIs in and of itself is a whole conversation, right? But for me, what's more important, in strategy development or formulation, Pat, we talk about a cascade model, right? So you can think of it as a sort of a triangle or a pyramid. And right at the top of the cascade model, we talk about winning aspirations, right? That's the vision. Where do we want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? But once we've defined the vision, Pat, then we must break it down, right? We must then say, okay, in order to achieve this winning aspiration, what are our strategic priorities, right? And you might define 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 key strategic priorities, right? But then we must break it down even further, Pat. And then we must say, what are our strategic actions and our strategic sub-actions to ensure that we achieve those key strategic priorities? But right at the bottom of our cascade, that triangle that we're talking about, right at the bottom of that cascade, Pat, is then those KPIs that we're talking about. And for me, the point that I'm driving home this morning is that those KPIs must be linked to that winning aspiration, that vision that we find right at the top of this cascade model. And so for me, it's about that alignment.
And it's imperative that we take it from the top and say, what is the strategy, as Prof said? How do we then implement it? We mustn't be scared of it. And now you're saying, let's further break it down. Let's come down from the pyramid and make sure that everyone knows their piece in the specific strategy. So thank you. We'll come back to you. Just want to hop on to Bert. Bert is the Johannesburg office. Well, he was the previous managing partner from a Johannesburg perspective. He now leads as the head of outsourcing business. Are we back on? Looks like technology dealt with us there. I'd like to introduce our next speaker here, Bert Lopes, who's the head of business services in Johannesburg nationally. With over 25 years experience covering a wide spectrum of clients, he's developed a strong working relationship with both external audit and other assurance services. Bert's clients range from subsidiaries of multi-listed, large corporates, JSE listed, small entities. Bert, good morning. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Pat, and thank you. Hopefully the technical problems are resolved.
No, it was a little bit of a glitch. We were getting hacked a little bit. They were trying to see if they could get into us, but they've sorted it out.
Yes.
Bert, let's get straight into it before I get the poll going. I mean, Bert, you've got a lot of experience. You've been through mergers, you've ran entities, you've been an auditor. I need to understand, and the crowd probably wants to know, how do we assess a client's readiness to face, multiple business challenges throughout the journey as a first and foremost? And how often should companies strategies? What should they be doing to remain relevant? And then, I mean, we were at a conference and the biggest question is your business relevant? Take us through that, Bert.
Yeah. Pat, thanks. A lot has been said, and I must say, listening to all the learned panelists on this panel, I really have gleaned on some of the analogies used, and I'll apply some of those. So I like the running analogy because, as you know, I also run, and the question comes up: why would you do it? But I think you've got to go back to, you made a statement about how culture can eat your strategy, and the culture of your organization, and recognizing that, is everyone aligned? Those words have already been used. You've got to start off with understanding that. If you don't have a good understanding of where the business is, the culture of the organization as it is, and really clarifying and having everyone clarify their points of view, where they stand, how they see the business, how they see, to your question about are they relevant today and how they're going to be relevant tomorrow. If you don't take a hard look at those facts, it's very difficult to move forward on implementing a strategy. That you've continuously got a handbrake. And to your point, I mean, we've done mergers, acquisitions, and that is always, some take a lot longer than others to do, but you always go down to the same parts. You've got to get everyone's buy-in. You've got to get everyone on board. If you don't get everyone, you've got to get a majority, and then you've got to manage the people that are not yet believing, and you've got to understand what their views are and take them forward. So practically, you've got to look at that. Secondly, you've got to identify where is the business. I mean, we like to use the good old known 7 business life cycles, just to understand where you are in the business, because there are some common themes that come through once you understand where you are in that business and how you go forward. So, just trying to make it more easily approachable and easily adoptable in terms of how you do it. So you could be, Christelle mentioned, you could be in an exit phase. I mean, by the time you're in an exit phase, your strategy and then your actions that will follow are very different than if you're sitting in a expansion phase wanting to raise capital. You might actually then not be thinking about raising capital for purposes of the business, but more about how you're going to fund an exit, how you're going to fund a disposal of the business, who are the potential buyers. So then your whole focus on the actions become very different. And so these are some of the practical elements just to try and apply, because we've got to recognize many organizations are small businesses or private entities or family-owned businesses that, although they might look out for professionals to help them guide, they also don't in some cases. I mean, we always recommend try and get better governance, try and get better guidance, and discuss it with a professional, just so that you can see the wood for the trees. Often you can't see the wood for the trees when you're so in the business. And so that's the key point, that to make this thing operational, you've got to do that. And then the last thing I just want to touch on, and a lot has happened around scenarios. So you've got a strategy, you've got action plans, but when you're setting up your strategy, you should already be looking at potential scenarios that may require a change in plan or a change in emphasis. So using Adrian's example, he's got to run. We know he's got to run, and he most probably has a training program, but he's now 2 weeks behind that training program. There's a scenario. I assume you already had considered a scenario of saying, like, well, I might blow a week out of this. What is my scenario to achieve that strategy? He may have to do tonight, but take a break. He may have to extend Saturday's run, And he might have to do some conditioning or strength training or something, but a scenario to deal with that eventuality so that it's easy and it doesn't stress you out, because it's in an environment of one person, you can deal with it. But an environment of dealing with a team is already a lot more difficult, because you're taking a team on a journey. And think of, we couldn't understand how the Springboks lost to Argentina. What happened? Do we need to go back to the drawing board? No, we didn't have to go back to the drawing board. There were quite a few issues that took place while we lost that first game, but you don't throw everything out. It's a scenario. There was a change in team, changing tactics, playing away, whatever. All those bits and pieces come into play. Another scenario has to come in. And that scenario would be how you change your team, how you change your team dynamics, how you change your focus and your game plan on the day. You've got to be agile. So that's what a small business has to do.
You touch on some critical points here, and I want to just understand from everyone as well. I mean, in the life cycle for everyone and on the call, where is your business? But further to that, Bert, how do I approach the strategy depending on where I'm at? I mean, you've touched on, you say, if I'm exiting, but coupled with that, the governance that's important within the strategy development. What is the role of governance when looking at the risk? So there's a risk now that Prof is 2 weeks behind. He needs to now go in almost a double up, but there's also a risk that he might get injured by now doing more strength training, longer runs. Instead of a 5K, he's now doing a 10K. There's all those. How do we deal with that from a governance perspective?
Yeah, we use the word governance, but it's governance, it's accountability, it's being deliberate, it's having an execution plan and executing. It's all that comes into it. So governance gives you a structure, a guide as to what's best practice. So governance could include having an external person, chair, supervise, oversee. Why to have that? Because that person will hopefully have deliberate plans and ensure that you will go back to look at what you've achieved so far and what needs to change. So in taking the running analogy, most probably Adrian will be phoning a friend. His friend in this situation is his coach. Fine, coach, I've missed 2 weeks. Give me guidance. Now, by doing that, that's already taking accountability, but it's also some governance, because the coach will say, no, hold on there. It's not so bad. You've already done so much. In actual fact, your body needed a bit of a break. We'll build you up here, and there's a plan in execution, but the plan still keeps on being executed. So we've got to keep on executing. You're not going to achieve whatever your goal is without being deliberate. There's this, what they refer to as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Everyone thinks they're above average. Everyone. There's been a lot of research done around this. Everyone thinks that they're above average. And the studies show, why is it? It's because we don't want to be average. We all think we can achieve, we all think we're above average in everything we do. But the reality is we've got to be very deliberate and to really be above average, because everyone's got the same, we all want to win that race, starting off with that. We all want to win that race. So no one wants to be average. Everyone sees themselves above average. How are you going to be in the winning team? You've got to be deliberate.
So this is amazing. Everyone wants to be above average, but the question is, are you willing to put in the hours to become above average? Bert, I'm going to hold it right there. I'm going to go back to the prof, because there's a lot of questions. We are noting your questions, everyone. We will be going through them. I know that we've got 20 minutes, so we'll try to get through as much questions as possible. Prof, I want to come back to you just quite quickly here. There's this whole, analogy where people talk about, is it plausible? Is it possible? Is it profitable? How does the concept of license to exist differ from operating in survival mode? Many times as business owners, entrepreneurs, we've got great ideas. It's a promised land. It looks great. But maybe there is no business case. Take us through, how does that operate? What actually happens in our minds? What have you seen? Any practical example of saying, is it possible? Is it practical? Is it plausible? Is it profitable? Just take us through that.
There's a lot in that, Pat. First, if I could just stay with Bert for a second. The good news is I was 2 weeks ahead of schedule, so now I'm on track.
So you equalized, break even.
Okay, perhaps I've overshared. I hadn't intended my my personal run. I better give updates on social. There's a couple of things. So first, going on in the chat, speaking to Narshana, there's this discussion about the how being even more important than the what. And what I put behind that was, I also provoked thinking about the why. And the why is almost invariably where the license to exist comes from. The why is fed by passion, by purpose, by an insatiable desire to get something done because it fits a need. Over the last 20 years, I've been involved in a fantastic piece of work, and it asks the question, simple but powerful: what are the attributes of businesses that are able to pull away from industrial and economic gravity? What is it, back to Bert's points about the Dunning-Kruger effect, what is it that allows you to be the above average, of all of the averages? And one of the elements that is common to businesses that are able to pull away from this industrial and economic gravity is they've got a couple of things going on. The first is a recognition that sustainable businesses have the community and company are inextricably intertwined. Now, what I mean by that is it's not vegetable gardening or painting schools. I don't mean that by community, but that what you are delivering, your reason for existence meets a social need. It leaves society richer. It leaves your customer in a better place. Extractive businesses ultimately run out of road. And, there are abundant examples of extractive businesses. A pawn shop close to a casino would be an example of extractive business. It's survivalist. It's preying on the weakest. This isn't a business that is likely to be able to franchise and go multinational. It is also a business that will overwhelmingly be determined by its environment. I'm thinking of that on the spot. So I hope that that's an example that travels. So businesses that feed community, that are driven by a purpose. This somewhat related is every single business. I love this quote from Mike Tyson. He says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Widely overused in business school settings, but man, is it on point. Every single business has a plan. Of course, Tyson didn't say that. What Tyson really said was, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. But he is on point. And businesses, the second overarching attribute of businesses is they have grit. They're able to withstand, to deal with the challenges. They'll face the setbacks. Back to Bert's point, my 2 weeks is a punch in the mouth. I have to deal with this. I am behind the pace. The third point is this issue of culture, and culture also is pervasive in the commentary, where people are talking about KPIs and how you instill this, and what you say in emails, etc. And culture does eat strategy, I would venture, because culture is really the way in which you carry out what you say, the way in which you go about your business, and culture is how you show up. All businesses have setbacks. Every person has a bad day. How do you show up? How do you show up for your customer? How do you wrestle as a team? I love that point about team. How do you wrestle with a team to build brilliant? And that is the embodiment of culture. Now, these businesses, when it comes to culture, first, the culture is shared and celebrated. I think that point speaks for itself. But the second is that the culture is actually a shared culture, more often than not, a bottom-up culture, which means these are people who build and buy into the business. A quick anecdote is JFK, when they're planning to send a person to the moon, goes to visit NASA, and at the NASA facility meets the janitor at the end of the tour and asks the janitor, what do you do? And the janitor says, no, he's part of the team that's putting the man on the moon.
Wow.
That's the shared culture and belief. And there is a clear purpose in this business, NASA. It's to get a person to the moon for the greater well-being of society and humanity. Now, that passion, that purpose is almost impossible to kill.
Prof, that is absolutely remarkable. And I think everyone listening here will take that quote, will take that learning from NASA to say, a janitor sees himself as part of a team that's taking someone to the moon. That's powerful. And a lot of the times organizations don't have that. When you ask a reception, what's your purpose? Why are you here? I'm here, I'm working. They don't know what the actual strategy or goal or the bigger delta is. So it's absolutely amazing. Prof, there's a few questions.
Can I say this?
Yeah.
Can I say this very quickly, Pat? Sorry to speak over you, but more often than not, great ways that we can learn about strategy and understand our own strategy, refine it better, is by learning from others. That we're our own worst critics. So what can we learn from others? And here I'm quickly reminded of businesses that have been brilliant in implementation and execution of strategy. Perhaps one of my favorite examples is Southwest Airlines, where if you're in the airline industry, it is a great way to lose money. But Southwest Airlines has been profitable every single year since inception, 1968 to now. And it's a fantastic case study. If you meet a Southwest Airline employee, you know that their purpose is to get a plane into the sky and get their customer to their destination. Full stop. That's what we're about. And we've got a lovely example in South Africa under Roger Foster Airlink. I think is increasingly impressive in delivering in a very, very difficult industry. Those will be two good examples of execution in tough environments.
I've got a question from Sandile, and then I'll move on to the other panelists as well. And he says, how do you translate the strategy to actionable plan while avoiding the traps of being misaligned?
Questions for me?
Yep.
So I think a couple of things. The Kaplan and Norton work is a lovely piece of evidence that tells us in most instances businesses land up in places that they never imagined. That strategy is the place where rubber hits the sky, is their exact quip or quote. And why businesses land up in the wrong places is they underestimate luck, bad luck, good luck, providence, and they overestimate their capability. Bert's point about the Dunning-Kruger effect. So, are we monitoring our progress? Are we able to explain where we land up? And are we being honest and accountable in that evaluation? What went wrong? Very easy to point to the external environment. But what role did we play in that? In terms of implementation or operationalizing the strategy, there's a whole lot of, again, fantastic company cases that we can learn from. Here, a really good example is the Development Bank of Singapore, which in 2007, a guy, Piyush Gupta, becomes CEO. It's a 20,000 employee business. It's a paper-based bank. It's a branch bank network. And they are slowly going out of business. And Piyush Gupta is tasked with digitizing the bank. And here's how you just drive culture to the heart of your implementation, is he gives every employee one of two KPIs. You have to do a customer journey and you have to do an employee journey. You can't hide from this. And the customer journey, you can't phone a friend inside of the business. You have to experience the customer experience, raw, unadulterated, naked. Once you've identified a problem, you've got there is a line to Piyush Gupta. It's called Tell Piyush, and it doesn't mean that in telling Piyush he's going to respond to every single thing. He will acknowledge every issue that is flagged, but then the teams that are the person that identifies the problem is tasked with forming a team. Now that you've identified the problem, form a team. I'm putting you in charge. It's your responsibility, and they have 72 hours to come up with the solution. Not 72 weeks, 72 days. Send me an email. We'll address it at the next Manco. Tell me the solution, 72 hours. I'll see you then.
Geez, amazing. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a task, 72 hours. Let's get responses. The next question I'll like to pose it to Bert. It says, for disruptive businesses, it's coming from Daniel Monga. How do you come up with and implement the right strategies in the early stages of your business? And secondly, what strategic risks should startups be most mindful in the first 18 to 24 months? Bert?
Thanks. Thanks, Pat. I'm just connecting there via video. So the first, there were two parts of that question. Just in the first 12 to 18 months, how do we?
Yeah, so from a disruptive business perspective, how do we actually implement the right strategy? So we're starting off, what should we be doing from a disruptive side of things? And in that first 18 to 24 months, what should we be mindful, the most significant risks in that stage?
Yeah, so I mean, identifying market and market forces at play, external to you and the organization. What are those? Referring to competitors, I mean, you can consider competitors, taking, for example, the airline industry. You know, what makes people come to you? You, the one airline, because you deliver, you fly on time, you're efficient, people, you know, feel safe in the trip. So I mean, those getting that focus area, what's happening in your marketplace, what's happening in your competitive environment, what's happening from a global perspective, just understanding some of those dynamics, and then also trying to disrupt some of those, because again, to stand out, what can you offer that's different to what's there, and are you then, to the point of relevance, are you relevant in offering? So I'm assuming that based on that question, we already are comfortable in the space we're in terms of the services we can offer, or in terms of the product we offer. Then we're talking about tweaking those. But it could be a new product offering, it could be a new service offering in terms of that focus area. Question is, are we bold enough to invest and back it? Because that's often the big challenge. You know, you look at many businesses, it can take anywhere between 3 to 5 years to find a profitable equilibrium on a new development, a new service, a new product, So if you're one of these organizations that have got deep pockets, or if you're one of those that have got already funders that are ready to invest in good ideas, it might be a lot easier. But if you are still looking for seed capital, we all know how difficult it is. We deal with quite a lot of the tech and fintech type of organizations, and how difficult it is to raise capital. In the renewables, we know and we see it can be quite difficult to raise capital, particularly in the beginning phases when regulation and the market forces are against you. So there's time, there's the right time for everything, but understanding and doing research is very important if you're looking at the disruptive nature and how you go forward.
Thanks for that, Bert. And I think it's important that we realize that, as we said, business is ever changing. It's not necessarily a flat line. But you mentioned something quite interesting there. You said, you know, if I don't have the funders or the deep pocket, it takes 3 to 5 years before we see it profitable. Do you, in your experience, think as business leaders, we've got the patience capital to wait 3 to 5 years before a business starts turning a profit?
Well, like, I mean, that now does also speak to the market in which you're in, and how that market's going to evolve and change, because you may have to itself change during that market focus. So, I mean, all good ideas come up with some knowledge of someone, either having been in it or they've got knowledge of the business from a interaction, a study, you know. So if someone's focusing on entering into a very particular business or a different product service offering, that immediately requires that decision making. But how are you going to be deliberate in terms of, you know, what are you bringing to concept? I mean, I always think of the Dragon's Den kind of concept here. If you're going to go there and you're going to come up with an idea, how good is that idea? How easy is it to implement it, whether it's a service or a product? And then how can you get backing for something like that? Would you yourself back that same idea if someone external was coming in? So that kind of thinking and challenging yourself and challenging an organization in that kind of third-party discussion is critical. And getting viewpoints is really important to the better governance and the ability to implement your strategy or your ideas.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, Bert, you're talking effectively about, you know, that co-creation space. And I mean, Christel, just a quick one before we close off, and then we'll go to Sfisa for a closing parting shot. Christel, you know, just take us through just how do we co-create a strategy there and the importance of sticking it out. Let's say we're waiting for 5 years to get to a point where we start seeing profits.
So it is a constant monitoring. So co-creating is obviously definitely understanding that alignment, understanding that Sifisa spoke about. You know, sometimes you're co-creating between companies, so it's not just yourself. That is a very tough co-creation to do, and that you need to keep that in mind constantly as you're going through the process. You're also co-creating with your community around you. Keep that in mind. I think Prof indicated in respect of the importance of some of these in respect of winning businesses, etc., in respect of being good for their communities. So they also keep in mind that you're co-creating with them. Your stakeholders is not just your employees and the people in your business. I just wanted to grab onto one question that I saw that came up that I don't think we got to. And it just was about people that are not-for-profits. And is strategy therefore actual valid, and is it necessary for not-for-profits? I believe strategy is important for any business. It's important if you're in a church. It's important for any type of organization. You are going to have some kind of strategy that you are working towards. So for a not-for-profit, although you may not be trying to talk to growing from a sense of growing profits, you may still be growing members, you may be growing reasons for being, you may be growing funding so that you can undertake the activities that you want to grow. There is a lot that you still need to do from a strategic point of view to get to the right funders, to interact in the right way, and to have those activities in place. So I believe, I mean, I've done this strategy development for not-for-profits, for larger companies, for smaller companies, for sporting agencies. Every single one has had a strategy that needs to be put in place. There's people needed to undertake certain activities to get to a certain place of where they want to be. So please, it's definitely for everything.
With that said, Christel, ladies and gentlemen, that is Strategy Decoded. I think we definitely need a part 2 of this. We'll definitely implore on the panel to come back for a part 2. Let's see if we can even have a live event, invite all of you business owners, leaders into a room, and let's keep on decoding strategy. Thank you very much, and we are out.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.